Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bon Voyage Besties, your favorite travel podcast. Today, we have a very inspirational guest for you, Melissa Rodway. She is a Canadian writer, traveler, and observer of human nature. As a writer, Melissa shares her passion for exploring with humor, honesty, and insight. The People You Meet is her debut book, which I think is amazing. I've always wanted to write a book, but I've never quite finished one, so mad respect for that. And Melissa, she's also the creator and the host of Fly Travel Radio, which is an adventure travel podcast. So let's welcome Melissa to the show. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And I'm super excited to talk all about your book. And I know that the book is about when you left Toronto to go on this amazing 4-month backpacking trip in Southeast Asia. So, what was going on for you at the time that inspired you to take that trip? Because that is amazing. It's something I've always wanted to do.
Well, then you should do it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was 35 at the time, and my partner worked in luxury travel. So he was going on this massive trip through Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and China, and wanted to make some connections with like luxury hotels and tour operators and things like that. So I quit my job and I was like the, tag along more or less. And it was awesome. I mean, I didn't have to do all the work. He like pretty much had an agenda. And I would say that 90% of it was backpacking, 10% was luxury. But what happened for me was that I got a little bit restless. So when you're with somebody who has a purpose, it's very different when you kind of don't and you're just there as the plus one. So we would be on these very long bus and train rides. And while we were doing that, it's like sometimes they were 18 hours, 36 hours from time to time. I would create these stories in my head about what we were seeing and doing and all of that jazz. And this was 2010. So we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. So once a week I would go to an internet cafe or find a hotel with a computer in the lobby. And I would send these emails home to friends and family about all the things that we were doing and seeing and how I was feeling and thinking. And lo and behold, those emails became this book. It's 15 years later. So, I finally decided to do something with them. But it's a really good story. It's very honest. It's very funny. And it will take you on the journey of like going through these countries, and you'll feel like you are doing everything I'm doing right along with me. That's sort of my style, to write like directly to you, the reader. You'll be happy that I did some things that you'll never do because some of them are awful. And you'll learn a little bit about that part of the world, the places, the people, the food, the culture, the geography, but more or less it's a very honest and funny account of like, and it's not all funny, some of it is sad, and traveling's not always a bowl of cherries, but anyways, it's a very insightful look into that time. And then it's a very good trip if you are planning to go there, because it has some good like ideas and it lists all the cities and the towns and the villages and all that kind of stuff. So that's the story in a nutshell.
That's really awesome. And I love the whole concept of this book being comprised of emails that you wrote and being repurposed as a book all these years later. It must have been really cool to go back and reread those emails. Because I know for me, I started traveling solo 2013, and I wish I would have kept a journal at the time. I started one, but got really lazy with picking it back up, which is such a shame because there were a lot of great experiences I wish I remembered better. But when I started my blog in 2015, it's so fun to just like go back to those old entries and reread them, because there's a part of me that's always like, wow, did that really happen, or did I make it up in my head? It's so cool. So what was it like going back and rereading them as you were putting the book together? I think that's just like the coolest concept.
Yeah, and I'm like you. I actually struggled to journal as well. It's much easier for me at that point. It was easier to like talk to people through email, to tell the story, because I'm not very good at journaling either. It's pretty cool to go back in time. I have a very good memory, so it does feel like I can easily transport myself back in time with these emails. But I think that the main thing for me is that I'm 50 now and I was 35 at the time. So I wanted to stay very true to who that person was. And I think it was interesting because in a lot of ways I really haven't changed. I'm the same person. But certainly, I have a different outlook on life now and all of that. So it was more about that, just making sure that I wasn't influencing that the tone and the character of my story, who is me, with who I am now. So I think it was more about that. But yeah, certainly very cool to go back and read these things. Not always easy though. You know, it's like there was a relationship in there, and yeah, and it's just interesting to go back in time and then you see how your life has changed and this, that, and the other. But it is cool to keep track of these things, these like chapters of our life. You know, it's worth it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like an amazing book. I really do want to read it. And it's funny because I was actually looking up places to go in Thailand today. I have Thailand on the brain for whatever reason. I've been watching a lot of Thai dramas, so I'm ready to like board a flight and go there. So I definitely need to read it, like
Yes, you
especially
do.
that. Yeah. So before you took this amazing 4 month trip, how did you define yourself, particularly in terms of identity, comfort zone, and travel style? Because I know in general, travel really forces me to step out of my comfort zone. And it's been like difficult, but also very rewarding at the same time.
I don't think I've ever had a real problem stepping out of my comfort zone. And the person that I was with, we traveled together quite a lot. So we knew how to travel together. No, that's not always easy, right? You have to be with somebody on a trip like that, that you have the same sort of like, yeah, you can do this kind of stuff together and you know what's going to trigger them or not, et cetera, et cetera. But we certainly did things on that trip that were not easy. I mean, we stayed in what is called a Tulu in China. It's like called a roundhouse, and it's in the middle of nowhere. And back in the day, these were built as like fortresses against bandits and animals and weather and blah, blah, blah. But these places still exist. So we went to one of these and we stayed in this, like, I think it housed between 600 and 800 people maybe. And it's exactly what it sounds. It's a big round house. And then there's like levels. So I think we were on like the fourth or fifth level, and they have tiny rooms, and there's like multi-generational families living in these places. They're all together in a communal environment where they raise animals and they garden and they like just basically live together to like survive. And they're a minority community, so there's fewer and fewer of them. But that was certainly out of both of our comfort zones. It was scary. Like people were lovely, but we couldn't communicate with them. We didn't speak the Hakka language, obviously. And the room we slept in had like a light bulb, it had a pail, and it had like some planks and boards and dirty blankets, and that's what we did. So things like that were certainly like were moments where you're like, what are we doing? And certainly out of our both of our comfort zones, but that's part of it, right? You have to do these weird things, and it's always temporary. It's not like you're going to live there forever. So there was a bit of that for sure on that trip, but I'm pretty open to like doing weird things, to be honest. It's part of the journey.
I love that vibe. It really is. I travel solo a lot. I travel a lot with friends now, and I like what you said about whoever you travel with, you have to know like what makes them tick and how to connect with them, because when you travel together it's just such a different environment than being together at home. But
Yeah.
when I travel solo, my family and friends will always say that about me. They're just like, "Rachel, you do such like wild stuff. You're open to so many things." Like I always think about paragliding in Slovenia when I'm scared of flying, and my friends and family are like, "What? Like why would you do that? That's crazy." But it's just that like open-mindedness and excitement for adventure that I think is contagious and really just amazing.
Yeah. Yes, I also went paragliding, and I understand why your parents feel like that. But it's fun, right?
Yeah, I told it is. I told my mom I jumped off a mountain and she was like, "Tell me when you get home. I don't want to hear about it
Yeah.
anymore."
Yeah. I think if there's something that happens to you, right? Like when you go away, you're just open to these kind of things, like more than we are at home, I think sometimes. So there's like this different personality in some ways that you inhabit when you're away that's just like, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed that too. I'm a lot more carefree when I'm overseas and just like more open to the experiences. Like, I'll give an example. When I'm at home, I'm very like fanatical about checking expiration dates on items in my fridge. Whereas overseas, I will just like eat everything, not really think about it, try all the cuisine. And I'll get teased for that too. They're just like, "You're so like picky at home," but then overseas, it's like a different person. But yeah, so on your trip, you wrote these long novella like emails, which is amazing. I absolutely love that because it is nice having those connections with friends and family. And when I started traveling, we had cell phones that would work overseas, but connecting like through writing and through emails is something that's really cool. So, what value did those emails give you in the moment in terms of processing your journey?
I think they did a lot for me, to be honest, because for one thing, it gave me something to do like every week. So it kind of introduced me to this whole world of like creativity and writing. I'd always written, but I think it was the first time where I paid attention to the writing. Yeah, it became kind of my job. So I was with somebody who had like something to do, he had a purpose to be there, and that became my purpose, which changed the trip a little bit. So writing these emails, it kind of like fed my fire. So whenever we were on long buses and long trains, I would just start like thinking over all the things that we'd been seeing and doing. And it also helped me process like what the experiences were, because I think if you don't write it down, totally fine. But I think that you can start to like forget what happened. And I think it just sort of like helped me marinate and what was going on and how do I feel and where are we at. But what was really interesting is when you revisit something like that 15 years later, you don't realize that you're still actually processing it. So I was able to edit it because I have a very good memory, but I think I didn't realize some of the things that I had actually learned about myself on that trip until 15 years later when I edited the story. So I think that we do these things and we think we know how we feel in the moment, but I think sometimes it takes time for it to like to really realize how something like that you've done has impacted you. So that was one of the cool things about revisiting this story all these years later.
Yeah, that's really awesome and totally true. Like, I'll read things in my blog from years ago and realize that I am still processing that so many years later. Do you have any particular moment in the book when you were editing that where you read it and you were just like, yeah, I'm still thinking about this? This is still impacting me?
I think the big thing that happened, I mean, many things happened on this trip, but I met a woman in one rural area. I think it was northern Laos, but you'll have to tell me when you read the book. She was in her 50s at the time, and of course, I was 35. And she was very well traveled. She had done everything, had lived more lives than anyone I'd ever met, and still to this day. And we were waiting to catch a bus, I think, somewhere. And she saw these two girls who were like 25 and backpacking. And she just stopped and watched them for a bit. And she said to me, those two girls are done and they need to go home. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, there comes a time on every trip when you have to realize that it's over and it's time to go home and you cannot stay any longer. So we had this really interesting conversation about travel fatigue and travel ego as well, and about how there is a little bit of like an ego on the road, like how long have you been on the road, or 12 months, how long have you been on, oh 18 months, blah blah blah, who cares, or like how many countries have you been to, etc etc. So we talked about that, and then she just said, when it's over, it's over. Like it happens to all of us. You have to know when you're done. And that happened to me on that trip. So I was so grateful that I'd met her, because 4 months in, because my partner was going indefinitely, at least for 9 months, 10 months, a year. But 4 months in for me, after 4 months, I was like, I'm done. I'm not enjoying it. It's becoming a job. I'm not getting anything out of this anymore. So I knew that I was done. And because of that, now anytime I have like an extensive period of time, I make sure that it's only like 2 months at the most, because I know that I will have had enough. And just like learning about travel fatigue and travel ego and all of that was huge for me on this trip. So I would say that that was the moment that has impacted the rest of my life in terms of travel.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear because I know with me in travel content creation, I have a full time job as a high school teacher. And sometimes I feel that travel guilt where it's like, oh, you're not traveling to 10 new countries this year. You're not traveling for 4 months at a time or 6 months at a time. And it's like, I like having my apartment. I like having my home base here. And I love like going for my summer vacations and like knowing that that's comfortable for me. So it always like feels good to hear about that because the whole concept of knowing when a trip is over and that it's okay to go home, I still feel is kind of taboo in the travel space. And I think it's really important to talk about.
Totally, it's huge. And yeah, people don't want to because there's a lot of ego involved in that and nobody wants to talk about the hard parts or when you don't want to do it anymore and there's nothing wrong with that. We're human beings and I'm like you too. I have a very normal life. I have a 9 to 5 job and I'm very fortunate that I can like build travel around it and I love it. But I also love being at home and like having my normal life too. I mean, I think that you're allowed to like both, but there is like some people will look at you like you're crazy, right? Like if they think that you're an adventurous person or a travel person, then that's all you live for and that you're supposed to be doing it all the time. And it's like, it doesn't really work like that. Not for some people, yes, but not for
Yeah.
everybody.
It's so true. Like, I love going to Japan. I love going to Scotland. I love going to Italy. I love all of these things. But I also like curling up on my sofa on a cold winter day, reading my romance novels and having my scented candles going. Like, that's also really enjoyable and happy for me. So it's really good to hear it and talk about it. So on that particular trip, like when you knew it was time to go home, was there a particular moment where you realized it and it hit you, or did it kind of creep up on you gradually?
I knew like around the 3 month mark, and I knew I could hang in there for another month. But this was also like a really fast paced trip, right? We were on the move probably every 2 days, which I like. I like that style, but it's not sustainable after a while. It's very tiring. And the last country I was in at that time was China. And China is very beautiful, but it's not an easy country to get around if you're not like we weren't on a tour. It was just the two of us, and the language is not easy. And when you're in remote areas, it's a very challenging place. So I knew I couldn't take anymore. And in some ways, you know, people have adapted to slow travel now. Slow travel wasn't even a concept at that time, and from what like in the travel world back then. Now it's becoming much more popular and common, and I understand that. And, you know, if you have the opportunity to like take a time out for a week or two somewhere or a month and just hole up and be quote unquote normal for a bit, maybe that would have helped me and then we could have kept going. But that wasn't in the cards for this type of trip. So yeah, I was done. I knew I was done. I knew I'd had enough. And I think that like traveling with purpose has become also another big thing. And for me, my purpose became writing these stories, these emails. But traveling just for the sake of traveling is not something that I can do for weeks on end anymore. I think I could when I was younger, but I can't anymore. So I think that that was happening to me as well. Like by 4 months, I was like getting a bit wild, like in my head, you know, I needed like some routine. I needed some stability. I needed like just normal life. And that's okay. I'm okay to admit that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Like wanting that routine again, especially like you said, after 4 months, and you're going to a new place every 2 days, you're taking these long bus rides. I know for me, over summer vacation, when I have no routine, I start like feeling it. I get very sluggish, I get very antsy. And then by the time I coach soccer season rolls around again, I feel a lot better because I know I'll be like set in a routine again. And it's really helpful. But something else that we also discussed a little bit in your book, you write a lot about these temporary but very powerful relationships that are in the moment. So, how do these fleeting connections influence your identity or help you like reflect later on?
Yeah, I think when you meet people traveling, it's a very different connection. So I think you're often meeting like-minded people who understand you in a way that people at home don't always understand you, even your closest friends, if they're not adventurous or travel type people, they don't know you in the same way. So I think that there is this really interesting combination, right, of meeting fellow travelers when you're on the road, in that you have a like-mindedness. You often end up having experiences that can be quite bonding, and you often have conversations with them that you wouldn't normally have at home. That could be because you know that you'll probably never see them again. So there's like this layer of like, I can just bare my soul to you. But I think that sometimes it's more than that. I think there is like, not with everybody, but when you meet certain people on the road, there can be this certain chemistry and spirituality with them that is very different than what we have at home. And I think also we have less judgment. So we're all in our little silos wherever we live, and we know who we know. And certainly I meet new people in Toronto all the time. But I think that, you know, there's a guardedness around you too because we're so familiar. But when you go traveling, a lot of that disappears. You know, you end up socializing with people that you probably would never even consider hanging out with in your regular life. People come across your path in all shapes, sizes, forms, ages, lifestyles. And how cool is that? You know, I think we let down all of our guards, and you kind of like take people in. And again, it doesn't mean you like everybody, but there is just like there's more receptivity, if that's even a word, to like different types of people. And that's really liberating. I also think that when you're away, you also kind of shed some things, you know, like you are free, especially if you go on your own or if you're meeting like new people and not bringing someone with you. There's a certain liberation in that, which also like frees you to like interact with people in a different way than you do at home. I mean, they have no idea who you are, or like you just sort of, it's like a clean slate, you know, in so many ways. So there's so many interesting things about the people that you meet when you're traveling. And I think often like these countries we go to are incredible, but it's these experiences with the people that like take it to the next level.
That is so, so true. And I like what you said about how when you travel solo, especially, you make these connections. I have made so many amazing, remarkable friends on my solo trips, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them many years later. Like, I'm going on a trip to London in February, and I'm meeting three friends. One of them I met solo in Osaka on a food tour, the other I met in Iceland on a snorkeling tour, and then the other I met at a travel blogging convention in Stockholm. And we have this friendship like these years later, and it's just like the coolest thing because, like you said, I just feel like so much more carefree on the road. I'm not like as worried about people like judging me because I'm, you know, not quite sure if I'll ever see them again. And it's just a really beautiful thing. And I remember like the attractions and the food and all that well enough, but it really is the people that make a trip memorable for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I keep traveling. I just love people. I love talking to them, and the friendships I've made on the road, I wouldn't exchange them for anything, worth every single penny I've spent on those flights around the world for sure.
Yeah, and it's amazing how quickly you get attached to some people when you're traveling and you feel like you've known them forever. Not everyone, but it happens to me all the time where you meet somebody on a trip and you just think, I've known you. Like I know you as well as I know people back home, you know. There's a really interesting familiarity, I think, with travelers sometimes. So I think it's the reason we all do it, you know. It's these like it's just you have no idea who's going to come across your path, and it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you talked about the one woman who you made a connection with who knew the backpackers it was time for them to go home and rest. Were there any other relationships that really stand out from this trip that you'd like to share?
I think it's interesting because that trip I was with a partner the whole time, and I don't know if you've ever traveled with a partner, but it's a very different experience, you know. You meet less people, I would say, and we certainly met lots of different people, and from locals to fellow travelers to people working in, you know, the industry. But it's not the same as when you are on your own. But yes, certainly we met lots and lots of people. We ended up traveling with a guy for a lot of our trip who was from Australia. We met him in the second month, and he was like, became just a part of us. We met this wonderfully crazy woman who was in her 70s and had been traveling on her own through India, through China, and then through like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. And she was fascinating because, as you know, like traveling alone as a woman is both awesome and sometimes not awesome. And when you're meeting someone who's like in their 70s, just tackling all this by themselves, they're legends. These people I find are like iconic. And she was like very odd. She was a very odd woman. And if you read my book, you're going to read more about her and just how like you had no idea what was coming next with her. But fascinating that she was out there doing this. And then 2 years ago, I was in Bolivia and I met this guy who was like 85 backpacking, and he was amazing. And this, I don't want this to sound like all I do is backpack with people who are older, because I don't. But it's
That's amazing. That's amazing.
but like it is true, when you, because it's hard enough. Like I get tired, and when you meet people who are still out there, like literally carrying backpacks in their 70s and 80s, it is very inspiring. So those people are the ones that I always kind of think about. Like certainly I've made tons of friends in trips just like you have, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think the people that pop into my mind the most are these like legends that are just still out there doing this. It's incredible.
And it's so inspiring too, because like sometimes I'll come across like disheartening things on the internet, like, oh, like, when you're older, you won't be able to do this, you'll have more responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, that's not true. Like the amount of incredible solo travelers in their 60s, 70s, 80s who are out there, they are complete legends and they're still doing it and they're still inspiring people. And that's who I want to be in my 80s. I remember this trip in Croatia. We were out at this nightclub on the beach at 2 a.m. and there was a woman, she had to be in their 70s, up on the stage, like dancing with these two young
Uh-huh.
guys. And she's like out dancing all of us. And my friend who I met in the hostel and I, we were just like, she's a queen. She is who
Yeah.
I want to be when I'm older. And I never spoke to her or anything, but she always like sticks out in my mind as the ideal that I want to be years
Yeah.
from now. It was just amazing to see.
Yeah, I was in Colombia last year and traveling with this woman who was in her like late 70s. And there were a few of us. Most of the people we were with were in their 30s. So I turned 50 and then she was in her 70s. And we did this horrific, well, no, it was great, but it was very challenging. The jungle hike in Colombia to the lost city. Very tough. And she did it. And she, same as you, like we went to this amazing nightclub in Cartagena and she was just giving it on the dance floor. And it was just like the best. It was the best to see that. So yeah, there's no age limit to having fun and adventures and travel, you know?
That is amazing. That is inspiring me to hit up the gym. I'm just like, I need to be able to hike and go to the club in my 70s. That is amazing. I love
Yeah,
that story. And I could just imagine like hiking to the lost city. Like I couldn't think I couldn't do it now and I'm 38. I probably need someone there
you
guiding
could
me
do
along,
it.
right?
You can do it. If she can do it, you can do it.
I'm gonna like motivate myself. I still want to do the hike to Machu Picchu. Haven't done it yet because I'm a little nervous, and I know that's more of an accessible one. But one of these
Hmm.
days, I'll definitely like get to it. Maybe
Yeah.
for my 40th birthday. I have some ideas bouncing around in my head. So, what has been the biggest surprise to you, and how travel has shifted your identity or self belief? Because you do a lot of soul searching on the road. That's for sure. I've maybe done too much of it.
Um, Sometimes it's not easy, right? As you know. So, especially when you're on your own and just like navigating, buses and like late, like, arriving somewhere late at night is not always ideal, but sometimes you don't have a choice. So, I think it's all those things. Like I'm actually quite into active travel now for so hiking trips and cycling trips and all that kind of stuff. But I think that when you do that's the harder stuff where you're completely on your own and navigating, languages and rural areas and things like that. It's not easy that, but when you get through it and you survive it and come out the other side, I think we should feel quite proud of ourselves because it's not for the faint of heart sometimes these situations about travel and that the unexpected lands in your lap, which is the reason that we do it, but sometimes the unexpected is not ideal. So I think you learn about what you're made of, you learn about your resilience, you learn about even how much time you want to spend on your own. I mean, sometimes I like being on my own for like a week or two at the most, and then I need people. Like, I mean, you can certainly meet people, but I feel like I'm tapped out of like making big decisions and things like that. When I was away in 2023, on one stretch I was gone for 2 months, and I made sure that like one week I'd be totally on my own, the next week I would meet up with a friend, the next week I might do a group trip, then I would go back to being on my own, like just to have the variety, because I think it's also important to like learn about yourself and how you like manage each of those situations, and how you do like fare on your own for a bit and then being with a friend or being with a group. And then I don't know, I think all of it teaches you something. It teaches you your own survival skills, your teaches you about your own company. um, yeah, it's an interesting thing. And like I remember being in Italy, I was doing the Cinque Terre, and so there's 5 villages there. So you can do the hikes that link them all, which are really touristy. But there's also hikes in the area, and so I was doing a few like in the surrounding area where I wasn't seeing anyone for like hours and hours and hours, and I was by myself for that week. And you go in and out of moments, right? Where you're like, oh my God, I'm so happy to be on my own, and I'm going to just like randomly jump into the sea and swim, and I'm going to eat this chocolate pastry, and isn't my life wonderful? And then like 5 hours later, you can be like, oh my God, I'm so lonely. Right? So you're like constantly going in and out of so many things. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, that's really true. And I love what you said about your trips about kind of like splitting them up between like time solo and then times with friends, because that's what I've been doing a lot recently. When I was in France this past summer, I met with two friends in Paris and we spent a couple days together. And then I had a couple days solo down in Toulouse, which was really nice because I had a chance to kind of just like be on my own a little bit. And then I joined a day trip where there was like a wine tour included. And it was really fun because one of the content creators on the tour, and it was totally by coincidence, it wasn't a content creator tour, recognized my Instagram and we had a connection. So that was like really fun. But it was nice splitting it up that way because I'm the
Yeah.
same way. If I'm like on my own for multiple days at a time, it's still fun, but it also starts to get a little old. And I'm very much an extrovert. I love talking with people, I love connecting with people. And that's just a fantastic way to do that. And I think it's good to like say that because I feel like solo travel, it's kind of like the same as, admitting that it's time to go home. There's this mentality that if you don't travel solo, that you're like doing travel wrong. And even though I'm a solo traveler myself, I don't think that's correct at all. I think there's many ways to travel and feel empowered by it.
I totally agree with you, and I feel the same way. Like there's parts of it that I absolutely love, and I think it's important to enjoy like a period of time doing what you want and traveling. But it can get really difficult. Like for me, I get very yeah, I get it can be lonely. It can be hard to be always making the decisions by yourself. And I agree with you. I think that there is that stigma of like I do a lot of group travel. Like I'll go on my own and then I meet up with like 10 strangers. And I love it. I have so much fun because I meet these awesome people, and it's great. And people kind of judge you for that too, right? They're like, "Oh, that's not real travel or whatever." And it's like, well, it's usually very it's not like you're on a massive bus. You're usually still taking like local buses, local trains, local everything. You're having local experiences. You're doing things you probably wouldn't do on your own. So I have a real problem with like that sort of travel shaming. I think as long as you are not hurting anybody and you're experiencing these cultures, you can do it in the way that is best for you. And for me, it's like there's a variety of ways. It could be on my own, it could be with a group, it could be with a friend. They're all great. They all come with their pros and cons, but like who cares as long as I'm doing it and enjoying it. I do really struggle with the old travel shaming because it does exist for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like it's gotten like worse in the age of social media. Like when I first started traveling like on my own back in 2013, at the time it was mostly blogs and like social media was was a thing, but not like it is now. And I think like the algorithms, they reward rage bait. So I just like come across it a lot more than I have in the past. I always just hit the block button. I'm just like, look, as long as somebody's enjoying their trips and they're not hurting anyone else, it's like
Yeah,
you do
totally.
you. I did a group trip. This was years ago, actually to Canada. It was to Banff and Jasper. We went through British Columbia, and I'm like not a camper. I'm not really good at it, but this tour, like they provided, the transportation, the tents, the activities. I met a lot of really amazing people, and I'm so glad I did it as a tour, because if I did it on my own, I probably would have gotten eaten by a bear, or like fell in a lake, or like something, or like
Yeah,
gotten lost without my headlamp. Like something would have happened. And it was just like a really cool way to sort of step outside my comfort zone a little bit and still like make amazing friends and to still
totally.
have an incredible trip. And it was like a trip, maybe like 14 people. It wasn't like a big like bus or anything, but it
No.
was it was really good. It was so
Yeah.
worth my while.
Yeah, those are great trips. And I also,
Yeah.
I do love now, like when you are totally on your own, what you were saying to earlier, how now you can like sign up for a food tour or a walking tour or whatever you want. So I think solo travel has become a lot easier in some ways because of the internet. So now like you could fill your day up with a bazillion things now and meet like lots of people all day long. I do think that that's pretty cool. I was in Oaxaca in Mexico for about 10 days, and that can get like pretty, Oaxaca is amazing, but after a few days on your own, you can be like, So I did so many cool, like 2 hour tours or like a full day here or whatever. I think that that part of solo travel is pretty awesome nowadays because back in the day, it wasn't really like that. So it's quite easy now to like to figure out how to spend your time. But yeah, there's so many ways to like travel. So people should just stop harassing other people. Let them do what they have to do.
Totally agree. I love that. Everybody be nice. All travel is amazing. Let's just embrace it and accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So, speaking of all kinds of travel, so you've been traveling for a very long time. You've had all these amazing trips. I'm like loving hearing about everything. So, for someone who's never traveled far from home, or maybe has just done a couple of trips domestically, how would you suggest that they begin a trip that challenges how they see themselves? They want to do a really like big life changing trip. What sort of advice would you give them?
Gosh, I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on people's comfort zones and how willing they are to step out of them. I had a friend who, it's like one of his first trips was to India. And I was like, you're crazy. Like, you should start with something a little bit more, gentle. But he's like, nope, I'm going full on. And he loved it. And then I think his next trip was to like Vietnam or something like that. But, I think everyone's different, so it's up to you. Like, I don't know. I'm not one of those people that feels like travel is always life changing. I think that we have amazing experiences, and I think we meet people and we learn about ourselves. And I think that over time, like that starts to like shape your life a little bit. But I'm not a person that's like, oh my God, I just went to, Colombia and I'm a completely different person. I don't believe in that. I think you come home and you still are who you are. I think it feeds you to want to have more adventures and to keep seeing the world and to keep meeting people. And I also think it can inspire you to take different avenues. Like the same guy who went to India as his first trip is now living permanently in Vietnam. And I think one thing leads to the next thing. So maybe in that way for him, the trip was life changing. But I think it is, you get out of it what you get out of it. And for me, even like I traveled a lot 2 years ago, and then the following year I did like a stand-up comedy course, and I did a set on a stage, and then I wrote a book. So I think that there's things that subtly happen to you because traveling can make you braver, and it can make you tap into your creativity. It can make you tap into things that you didn't know already exist in you. And from that, you kind of start exploring things in your world, in your creativity, in who you are, or you keep going on other further expeditions. So, I mean, to anyone wanting to do this, I think we're all drawn to like a place, like pick your place. and see what happens. And I also think, like, for me, I now focus on active travel. So I think it's also an interesting idea to combine purpose with travel. Like if you are interested in a certain type of music or cooking or food or whatever, I think that can be kind of cool as well, because travel for the sake of travel is awesome, but I also think sometimes it's nice to have like a purpose, a reason, a connection. I don't know if I've answered your question, but this is what I think.
I really love everything that you had to say, especially like with travel. Maybe it just like emphasizes what's already there.
Yeah,
For the Thanksgiving holiday, when I went home, I just had like a baby nephew born, and my parents are saying when I was like his age, like 4 months old, they were like, "Yeah, we took you down to the Caribbean, and you wanted to like get in the pool and get in the hot tub, and you were always trying to swim away from us, and you were just like very adventurous and very rambunctious." So they were like, it's really no surprise that you wanted to travel solo around the world. So I'm like, oh, I'm like, maybe those trips, they just like bring out what's already there to the surface in a lot of ways.
totally. And I think that's really interesting because I think sometimes it's either in you or it's not in you, or some people discover it later on in life and it becomes a huge passion. But sometimes, like, I know lots of people who don't want to go anywhere, and that's fine too. But isn't it interesting, right? How we're all built like completely differently. But yeah, it sounds like from the get go that was in your DNA.
I think so too. Definitely. It was a really like funny story because obviously I can't remember myself at that age, but I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So, since you've been writing about travel, do you have any suggestions for people to like capture like their trip, whether it's journaling, photography, conversation, or something else? Because again, the email concept was just so cool. Now I just like pick up the phone and do like video calls.
Yeah, I mean, because so that didn't exist, right, in 2010. And a part of me, 2010 was also like the big boom of blogging. So there's a part of me that's like, why didn't I just do that? Maybe I have a very different situation at the moment. But at the same time, yeah, there's things that we said in 2010 that you couldn't necessarily say now. So it's probably for the best. I think
Right?
yeah, totally. I think the thing is that you should journal or take pictures or write or whatever it is that speaks to you, but do it for you. I don't always think that finding the angle or the story for what you think people are going to want to hear and see is it's not the right thing for me. When I put stuff on Instagram or when I wrote those emails or edited this book, I wasn't really doing it for anyone else. I'm doing it for me. And isn't it great that some people are interested in what I have to say and they find it either funny or interesting or insightful or sad or whatever it is? But my advice is to like do it so for whatever speaks to you, not for what you think is going to get you likes. I'm not into that, and I could be totally wrong, but I think it has to be authentic. And I think when it's authentic, then people can tell, right? When they can tell it's genuine, they can tell it's real. And those are the best stories or the best photos or the best conversations.
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000,000%. And I also think it's really important too to live in the moment and actually take in what's around you. Cause I know sometimes as someone who does content creation, I can struggle with, like putting the phone down for a second and just like taking it in and enjoying it. So I've been on recent trips telling myself, you could take a couple pictures, but then just, take a step back and enjoy it and just savor that moment that you have and that's and not, worry about the perfect shot that's going to look good on Instagram or like the funny video that you're going to post on TikTok. Try to be in the moment a bit more. And that's something I've been really striving to do on my trips because I think it's important.
It's totally important. I mean, I'm not paid for I don't get paid for any of my social media. So my situation is very different. But for me, I rarely post anything while I'm on a trip. I post it often weeks later when I'm at home because I need time to process it and to think about what I want to say and how I want to share it and what the story might be for me. And again, my situation is different than most people that are like in that world of like making a living through content creation. But I feel like I don't even know what I'm thinking or feeling about a place until I've had some time away from it to like really let that out, or really think about it. And yeah, so that's how I work. But again, other people probably don't have that luxury of waiting.
I like that though. It gives you some time to like really, think about it a bit. Cause I know sometimes if I post something in the moment, a couple weeks later, I'll look at it and be like, oh, this is cringe.
Even editing these emails for me, even 15 years later, I was like realizing things that I was thinking and feeling that I didn't even know at that time. So that's what we were like saying earlier, that you don't always really know how you feel until sometimes later. Like it's fascinating what time does, for memories and experiences.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I want to go back to my old posts in my blog now and give them a bit of a reread myself, just to kind of do it as a thought experiment. So, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Always.
All right, so you're in the hot seat. All right, so this is would you rather. So, the first one is would you rather always plan every detail on a trip or just wing it and see what happens?
I'm somewhere in the middle, but I probably lean more towards let's wing it.
Love that. I love that. The best moments come from those unscripted like parts of the trip. Like I know for me, I plan a lot of things and then I always wish I would have left more free time.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah.
All right. So, would you rather travel with your younger self or with your future self?
No, my future self is perfectly fine. Been there, done that with my younger self. That's done.
Yeah, I think about myself at 26 and I'm kind of like, I would be pretty unbearable. But then
Yeah.
I'm just like, what would I be like in the future? Like, it's kind of interesting to think about. I think I'm going to go with my future self just because I'm like really curious and nosy. So, would you rather visit one new country every year or spend a whole year deeply exploring one country?
Well, it depends what that country is to deeply explore it, but I'm actually in a place where I would really like to go live somewhere for a year. I don't know how I'm going to pull that off, but I will figure it out. So I'm going to go with that one. That's where I'm at the moment. I would like to do that. I would like to live somewhere where I can figure out a bit of community and go hiking and have like an outdoorsy life. So I'm going to go with the latter on this one. Yes, I'd like to live somewhere for a year.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I would definitely love to live in Japan for a year. It was one of like the best places I've ever been. What country do you think you would pick for a year?
It's changed. To be honest, I used to think I would love to live in like Mexico or a Spanish speaking place because I love the culture in South America and Central America. But I don't know, lately I have this real pull to Europe, so I would really love to live like in a mountain town or in Scotland or I don't know, or in France, like somewhere in the Alps. I would really like that. That's on my radar.
Oh my gosh, and they're both such beautiful places. I could go back to France a million times. I just absolutely love it. So, would you rather have a life changing encounter with one person on a trip or 100 small but joyful connections?
I'm 100 small but joyful connections. Yep. I'm a bit of a nomadic person with people.
I love that. I'm always like the more the merrier. It
Yeah,
makes for so
totally.
many incredible stories to share with friends and family. Well,
Yeah,
I
me
really
too.
appreciate you being on the show, Melissa. This was a great conversation. So, where can our listeners find your book?
They can find my book on Amazon. It's called The People You Meet, and look up The People You Meet by Melissa Rodway, because what I discovered is there's more than one book called The People You Meet. I did not know that. But look for mine. So The People You Meet by Melissa Rodway. And then you can also follow me on Instagram, fly_travel_media. That's a good place to find all my awesome pictures and write-ups. So yeah, that's good.
Awesome. Awesome. And we'll be sure to put that in the show notes for all you guys. I know I'm definitely going to check out Melissa's book. So before we sign off, do you have any last bits of advice that you would like to leave our audience?
Let's see. I think that it's just important to embrace adventure, and who cares what it looks like as long as it's your adventure. So that's all I really care about, is encouraging and inspiring people to seek that out in their lives. I don't think we all have enough of that. And again, this could be like going for a hike 2 hours from your house or an hour, or who cares where it is, but it doesn't have to always be jumping on a plane. It doesn't have to always be jumping on a train or anything. It can be just whatever is in your own backyard, or your own like creativity, or whatever it is that like moves you. I think that we need to do more of that. And then we will all be happier people if we like just tuck into what speaks to us. So that's my advice for everybody.
Love that. That's like a really amazing note to end on. And I agree. More adventures, the better. So, guys, just Rosa and I always say, just do it, get out there, enjoy your life. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Bon Voyage Besties. A huge thank you to Melissa for joining us and sharing her incredible insight on how travel changes the way you see yourself. Her debut, The People You Meet, is a beautiful reminder that the journeys we take and the people we encounter along the way can shape us in ways that we never expect. So you can learn more about Melissa's work and tune into her own show, Fly Travel Radio, at flyrodway.com. So as always, thank you for listening, besties. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Spotify. It really helps us out a lot. Until then, safe travels, and we'll see you on the road. Bon voyage, besties. Take care.